light. Shadows creep and crawl with every scream. Hear the echoes call. Synths and guitars in a haunting blend. An 80s vibe where the terror transcends. Shocktoberfest, scream until dawn. In your nightmares, the terror's reborn. Lights flash, monsters take flight. Embrace the darkness, it's a metal night.
Hello everybody and welcome back to day 4 of Shocktoberfest 80s Rewind. As always, I'm your host, Wildman Wes. We hope you enjoyed our first block of movies for 1980, and now we move on to 1981. While looking through the list of movies from the 80s in the horror genre, I always tend to make sure that I find a little bit of everything. And one style of movie in particular that I really love putting in these series is an anthology film. Today we're going to be talking about The Monster Club. This movie is about an author of the horror genre known as R. Chetwynd Hayes. I had to look at my cheat sheet a little bit because it's one of those big names. He meets a man outside who seems to be in a little bit of a physical struggle with his health, and when he goes to check on him, he finds out that this man is a vampire and gets bitten. Now, this author is a little bit scared to wonder if he's going to become a vampire. The vampire ensures him he won't become a vampire, and he wants him to return the favor by following him to a nightclub so he can tell his stories. When they get to the nightclub, the author sees that there's all of these demons and monsters and ghosts and other crazy beings dancing around and having a great time. And the vampire sits him down and talks to the author about all the different groups of horror icons, vampires, werewolves, ghouls, and even some that have names that are just off the wall. The vampire takes Hayes aside and starts talking about specific ghouls and demons of the Monster Club, and he starts off with a story about a creature known as a Shadmock. This is a being that is able to project high-frequency sounds in order to defend oneself or even to cause chaos amongst people around them. The story of Shadmock starts off where a man and woman are professional cat burglars and are trying to get the big score so they can retire from their work and be rich and thrive without having to lift a finger ever again. They meet this man who has a lot of historical artifacts in his house, and the man sends his girlfriend over to meet this man, and he never leaves his house, and he seems very quiet but very nice. And this woman starts feeling a little bit guilty about trying to take not just artifacts, but money. And then the man wants to marry her. He's falling in love with this woman, and she flat out tells him, "I don't love you, I don't want to be with you." He loses his mind a little bit, and he uses his high-frequency pitch and destroys her. And when he sends her back over to her boyfriend's house, a deformed and possessed state, he loses his sight and spends his remaining life in an institution. Now we move on to the story of vampires, which is kind of hand in hand with one of the main characters telling a story, or an anthology series. This story is about a young boy who is the son of a film producer, and he's different. He just seems very quiet and shy, and he's being picked on by bullies left and right, and he meets this man who seems to be very intrigued with why he's so quiet, and it turns out this man is with a group of men who are trying to destroy his father because his father is a vampire. Well, they go to his house and they try to destroy the vampire, and the main vampire hunter gets bitten, and then his friends try to chase him off, and, well, the vampire family lives happily ever after. Our third story is about a being called a Hungo, a ghoul human. Don't ask questions. This is just one of these movies that you just have to smile, nod, and play along. This story is about a film director who is having a very hard time finishing his movie, and he finds a remote location out in a distant village where people are a little out of the ordinary. They're very pale and tragic, and it turns out that they are these hungos, these ghouls that can only stay in the realm of the living by feeding off the flesh of humans. He befriends one of the female hungos that starts to fall in love with him, and they try to escape the village. Unfortunately, this female hungo gets hit by a rock and does not survive. This is kind of an odd situation, a ghoul getting hit by a rock, and that's what sends them out from their unfinished business. Meanwhile, this film director finds the authorities, and when they're taking him supposedly to the station, they take him back to the village because they too are hungos and they want no one to find out about their location. We finish this movie with the vampire wanting Hayes to become a member of the Monster Club. Now, the monsters don't necessarily like the idea of having a human being a part of the club, but then the vampire insists on saying, we have so many groups. Why don't we have a human? Why don't we have someone from the realm of the living to represent the Monster Club? Because he's a horror author, he should be included because he understands us. And in the end, Hayes accepts the offer to be a member of the Monster Club, and everybody parties and has a great time. Now it's time to talk about what I like and what I don't like about this film. What I don't like about this film, very, very little. And even if I do have things I don't like about it, it might be on the verge of nitpicking. On this one, I would say it's what I don't like, but at the same time there's a charm to it. Now, when it comes to the special effects, they spent a lot of the time with the special effects within the stories. And even the ones that they did use for the film, very, very basic. Very basic. The monsters that are part of the Monster Club during the segues to the stories, they have a lot of those store Halloween masks, if you get my drift. Big rubber masks. So that's where I start to get a little bit, wait a minute. They had a fairly decent budget with special effects. They could have used a little bit more liquid latex masked with facial paint as opposed to just, here, big rubber mask, boo. But there is a charm to it because this could also be that maybe these ghouls and ghosts and monsters may have a more deformed and demonic facial appearance that they want to hide. So they put a Halloween mask on to not scare anybody else. Who knows? However, like I said, a little bit of a charming situation, but at the same time, when it comes to special effects and budget, they may have been a little bit cheap in that department. One other little thing I would say, the whole genealogical mapping of all the different creatures and ghouls. A lot of it, I would say, is attention span wise, because when the vampire is talking about each and every one, the author starts asking, well, what about this one? What about that one? Oh, no, that one can only do this, but this one can do this and that. But wait a minute, but why can't they do that one, and why can't this one? Why does this one get to do? Oh no, I've gone cross-eye. But then again, this is one of those things where it may not make sense, but there's a charm to it because it's supposed to keep you guessing in a way. Now it's time to talk about what I like about this film. This film legitimately does not take itself seriously because of the fact that, let's face it, a horror author is being taken to a monster club and being taken there to talk about the otherworldlies. And not just that, the fact of the matter is the cast. The main stars of this movie are John Carradine and Vincent Price. John Carradine playing the author Hayes, and Vincent Price playing the vampire. For those of you that have watched a lot of Vincent Price's movies, he is a little bit of column A and column B. A little bit of seriousness and a little bit of funny. In this one, he puts more of the humor into the horror. And this was also during the later part of his career where he did more goofy and silly horror as opposed to the macabre. And I really appreciate a lot of his humor, especially horror puns. This movie is loaded with horror puns, and as I've mentioned before in other episodes, whether it's on Shocktoberfest or other series, being a dad now, I love the dad jokes and I love the bad puns. And the ones that they use in here, they don't use them just for the sake of using them. There are a lot, but they use them in a way that really make you go, instead of, oh boo, it's the, I see what you did there, bravo. Apart from John Carradine and Vincent Price, there are some well-known names in this cast. We do have Donald Pleasance from the Halloween series, we have Britt Eklund, we also have Anthony Steele, we have Richard Johnson, we also have Barbara Kellerman, and also Patrick McGee, amongst other people that were at the time some of the who's who, or some of them that were just getting their start. And they actually give a very good performance in all of the segments in this anthology series. The music in this movie is definitely interesting. There are varying types of music and genres that really bring out not necessarily just a charm, but a different style and approach to funny horror. And two artists in particular, I was rather intrigued. One of them, John Williams, the man who gave us so much music from Star Wars and so many other movies, has music in this. And it's interesting because John Williams did so many soundtracks to amazing films, and Monster Club necessarily wasn't a big film. This was one of those films that it really didn't get a lot of notoriety when it came out. And not just that, another artist, UB40, Red, Red Wine, which is rather interesting because I remember more of UB40's music from the 90s. So that being said, it's interesting to hear their music from 1981. I wasn't exactly sure what they were going with, but nonetheless, very interesting. Speaking of interesting, in these segues, instead of just a little bit of conversation back and forth from the author and the vampire, we also have musical numbers with bands playing music and demons dancing, also to the point where there is one animated sequence where a woman is doing a burlesque dance. And a lot of it is, with the burlesque, it's shedding the skin. And that's really interesting and a different take on some of the risque things that horror movies can do, especially in 1981. It is time to grade this film. This film, as I mentioned, interesting and odd, but the charm of this movie alone, and not just that, but when you have people like I've mentioned of John Carradine and Vincent Price, you know that it's not going to take itself completely seriously. And they don't. And they're aware of it. And not just that, but the ending was really fun because it really brings in this kind of inclusion idea. Something that we really, especially in the last 40 years, said from this movie, really need to focus on. Because the horror fan base does get a lot of bad reputations of watching all these gruesome films, watching all these movies with bad language, and just the fan service, let's just put it that way. Y'all know what I'm talking about. So yeah, we get the finger shaken at us saying, why can't you be more wholesome and why can't you do this? Well, in this movie, we've got the people that aren't necessarily considered wholesome, being the undead, saying, hey, why don't we include this human into our group? Someone that gets us. Someone that may not necessarily do what we do, might be fairly wholesome, but accepts us. Why can't we accept them back? That's all it really is. I'm getting off my soapbox now because it's time to grade this. A-. A- because, yes, there are some moments in this film where I'm just kind of going, it's a little off-putting because it's just, it's weird, and not in like the good weird. It's just that confusion. That's what it is. Just odd confusion, and takes attention span away for just a brief moment. However, very, very well put together anthology movie, and I recommend it. It is on Tubi. Go on that app and watch it, and you'll be glad you did. Well, we hope you enjoyed our review on The Monster Club. If you've seen this movie before and you agree with me, leave a thumbs up. And if not, put a comment in the section below. Let me know if there are some things that you didn't like about it. I'm really interested because not every horror movie's for everybody. Even the fans. They can be really great or they can be really bad. But in this situation, Monster Club's definitely going to hold a safe spot in my heart. Other than that, make sure you share on social media. Most importantly, push that little red button and ring the bell for instant updates. Until then, I'm Wildman Wes, and we will see you tomorrow for Day 5 of Shocktoberfest 80s Rewind. Take care, and as always, stay scared, kiddies.